Delta Force has been seated consistently in the top 5 for the FPS genre on Steam since its launch into public beta, and it's only going to get bigger. Season 2, titled Starfall, comes out on the 18th, and there's a lot you should know about. Recently, the devs had a huge developer preview stream that spanned just over 2 hours long, so what all was said, revealed, and more. Today we're breaking down what you should know about with this reveal and the upcoming content drop for Delta Force that I think makes it a pretty solid offering to check out. Perhaps now being the best time to jump in and check it out. So drop your thoughts, drop a like if you enjoy the Delta Force coverage, and subscribe for more FPS coverage. I'd love to have you in the community. For now, let's get into it. So for the audience here on the channel, let's start with the warfare content, the more traditional MP loop that you may be used to. Large scale combat akin to Battlefield, but nothing but respawn, fight for points, or positioning on the map and repeat. We'll get to the extraction mode in a few, but for now, let's talk about what you may be more intrigued in. Warfare, we end up seeing 2 maps added to the fold here, Knife's Edge and Trainwreck. Knife's Edge actually takes place on top of the Zero Dam Operations map, so off in the distance you can kind of already see what is a little bit of that world set up from the Operations or Extraction map that you have on offer. But it's a brand new play space, not available in the Extraction mode, and only being for the Warfare experience. The interesting part for a lot of players maybe is this is going to be infantry only on this map, so no tanks or anything like large-scale vehicles that you have to deal with, which is nice. Looks like it's a large scale, but again, still relatively tighter map by comparison that makes it something that it won't feel too out in the open, but also not claustrophobic. Looking forward to this one. Looks really cool in my opinion. Then we also have Trainwreck coming, which is going to be a mid-sized map, but it isn't just infantry only. It's not the largest map in the game, but not small enough to be infantry only. There are going to be vehicles, tanks, and such there. There's also going to be construction and destruction mechanics included with this map, letting players destroy more than what you may be normally used to with these warfare maps, but also build up things like barricades that you'd see, say, in COD World War II's War Mode for comparison. Really excited for both of these maps, not only because of how they look and what they appear to bring to the warfare formula, but also because I'd say now we finally have an offering that's a good state. And what I mean by that currently is that we have Cracked, Ascension, Trench Lines, Shafted, and Threshold as the warfare maps. So 5 isn't bad at the scale at which the game is played. I mean, each of these maps are massive with various different sectors to progress through depending on the game modes you're playing, and considering the game is still only on one platform in open beta. But 7 is a much better offering than 5. 5, you're still going to have probably that situation of, man, I feel all I play is this map. So with 2 more available, it should make that a much more varied experience as you play, and I'm all for that. Now, we also will see new weapons available in both Warfare and Operations modes. The SR9 Assault Rifle, QCQ-171 SMG, and the QJB-201 LMG. Besides that, we're going to see a new operator available in both Warfare and Operations as well, Suniva, who ends up having a tactical gear of Total Armor, a gadget of a grapple gun or razor wire, and the rear guard trait where the shield that he has can end up being put on his back to give you a bit more of a sort of turtling effect that saves you from behind. There's going to be a new LTM introduced here throughout the season of Capture the Flag, so again, LTM not going to be there permanently, but I am very curious to see how this changes the sort of progression and flow of the gameplay experience on these maps, given that we have a lot of tug of war stuff back and forth. But I think this might introduce a nice dynamic to how the game itself is played in this LTM. We'll see new equipment and gadgets of the smoke grenade launcher for support players, and the assault classifications will have high explosive launchers for anti-vehicle play. Then we're also going to see on a core gameplay mechanic level, new mechanics added in. Dolphin diving is being introduced here, strangely, to me at least, described as only in the warfare mode here, the traditional sort of MP experience. On one hand, I get it because the extraction shooter is supposed to be more tactical in nature, but that's something that I just personally find it odd when mechanic sets differ despite being in the same game. But maybe that's just me. We're going to see more destruction details introduced here. The example they gave us was the tower falling at the end of Ascension, which not only has this big spectacle akin to what you'd see with some of the Battlefield Levolution of the past, but it also opens up further areas to explore and play out when collapsed. Now, personally, I think that there could be a bit more improved to the animations, the fluidity of all of that kind of stuff, but being an open beta, I assume it's only going to get better here in the future the more they build on that tech that is is being introduced. We also see new vehicle improvements where there's going to be more fluidity to how you bounce off of and can re-navigate if you get stuck. So that will be definitely nice as well. And finally, rounding out the warfare stuff here in terms of the marquee items and things that then can transfer over into extraction and the operations mode is a new battle pass that moves across both warfare and operations. So you have a bunch of new stuff to progress here over the course of the entire season. But that said, that's the warfare and the sort of traditional multiplayer experience. The extraction mode ends up having quite a few changes where we have map expansions. Not exactly brand new maps, but honestly, there's a lot of stuff here that may as well be new maps in how they play. Zero Dam has a massive underground update, which grants more playable space and makes the map a bit more spread out. You won't likely take a gunfight as often as you have previously, and makes it a little less claustrophobic. Then Space City, I think, has the more, outside of like just vast, expansive introductions of new playable space, I think Space City has a bit more of the gameplay experience changes, where they added a new northern portion of the map, but spawn adjustments were made so that you just don't sometimes get those god-awful spawns that you have to cross across the lines of sight of multiple different teams to end up getting to various locations of the map, basically guaranteeing you before the chance to die off spawn. Then there's going to also be a broken bridge event, like some of the other maps will have events that occasionally occur. The bridge will collapse, and if that happens, it opens up new sort of variable loot locations, a little bit more of things you have to traverse and keep your head on a swivel for, because it opens up different lines of sight and other things like that. So that'll be cool to see how all that plays out. The one thing that I'm very curious about is the new mode, Hot Zone. This is going to be 3v3v3, which are played on smaller segments of the maps, and it's going to be an LTM, so it's not permanent, but it's supposed to be faster, more frenetic, smaller maps, smaller play sets, and a little more combat. But will it be worth it? I think that's something that only time will tell, but it does look cool based off the initial reveals here of this. But that said, all of this is coming January 18th. I think right now is genuinely the best time to be getting into Delta Force for the reasons that we just talked about. Whether you played the closed tests, the first season here of the beta or not, we have a solid number of maps to play on, lots of stuff to earn and go for, more weapons to grind out and try and master, expansive updates to existing operations maps for the extraction fans, new mechanic sets that only offer more to the gameplay experience, and even more. I'm pleasantly surprised with the promise of the future here for Delta Force and what we see just right now before even being introduced to things like console and mobile. But wait, there's actually even more, because at some point during this season, it seems like the Black Hawk Down campaign is going to be released. We got a bit of an update, but not necessarily the most clear or transparent update that you may have expected or hoped to see, but an update no less. This is something that is now going to be a paid 7-part co-op campaign for Delta Force that is a faithful, gritty retelling of the story at hand. So for fans of the classic, more realistic and Milsim-esque Delta Force of old, this is now going to be right up your alley for sure. You don't have the sort of hero-based elements of the warfare or operations mode. You don't have the extraction loop that's thrust upon you like the operations mode. Unfortunately, there just was no details yet on when this will release, but it was mentioned that more information is indeed coming soon. So fingers crossed that's not too long a way off. And also, I don't believe they mentioned, unless I missed it, the price tag here for this. Initially, the goal was to end up having this be something that was also free to play, but somewhere down the line that ended up having to change. So hopefully it's not too expensive. But anyways, I'd say the only unfortunate part out of all of what we just mentioned in terms of what was learned out of this developer live stream is that we still don't have any sort of ETA on the console release or controller support for PC. So it still does make this a bit of a niche game for some players. Like if mouse and keys or PC as a whole isn't your thing, it's unfortunately a bit more of a wait before you can try this out in any capacity. Fingers crossed that initial target of Q1, thus being upwards of March 31st, still stays true, but again, without any update, who knows? And I'm kind of not getting my hopes up for that to be the case, like kind of bracing for worst case scenario, because they also detail the mobile launch was delayed as well, but for good reason. It just wasn't ready. So instead of forcing it out and being something that players would inevitably have a lot of issues with, they decided to say, hey, let's hold out on this and then get it to a proper state where it's ready to launch. So that looks to be something in Q2, getting closer to summertime perhaps, but at least it is something we have a little bit of information on. The final thing that we can really talk about is the 2025 dev roadmap, because obviously this is still an open beta. It's still something that isn't a full global launch, clearly being that we're missing still the main platforms of console and then mobile, but we did see a little bit of the plans here that were more generic and talking about a few things that were pretty cool. One of which that stood out to me was Season 3, the upcoming season, because we're in Season 1 now. Season 3 introduces nighttime aesthetics to the various different maps, maybe with like a day and night cycle here, but also with attachments to come along with that. So meaning you'll probably have NVG goggles or some type of laser that allows you to have a better visibility through all that. So excited to see what that amounts to, and then of course everything else here as we go through 2025 with Delta Force, and hopefully a pretty solid launch here when we finally get to the global release on all platforms. But want to fill you guys in because Delta Force is getting bigger. It's got promise right now, and I think has growing promise as we continue to go into the future here. So let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think of these updates to the game? Are you looking forward to it coming out on Xbox and PlayStation as well, so you can get the console version for yourself? Let me know, drop a like, and make sure to subscribe for more Delta Force coverage. I'd love to have you in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Modest Man Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.